no other leader that I know, 4 days after that defeat, in his off time in the summer, is in his office on a Sunday morning at 6:30. And you knew when he walked into the room went quiet. There was that presence, that aura, hit the boss's ear. He killed us. He absolutely killed us. Everybody loved him at the club because he protected them. And that's it. That's the secret to what he believed. I probably never said this before. When people say to me, what's the greatest moment in my life? I say it's the final in 99 in Nou Camp when we won the treble. But I made a run from right back. I got the corner for the first goal because I sprinted over to the left wing and took the long throw to put it into the box. It came back out to me and we got the corner. It's not an assist by any stretch of the imagination. It typifies my career of 7 goals and very few assists. I am no Trent Alexander-Arnold nor even a Dennis Irwin. But that you have to find a way to win. You have to just do everything you possibly can. You cannot leave anything on the pitch. You just sprint everywhere. You just do everything. And that's why I think he kept me there till I was 36, because it wasn't through ability at the end. He kept me there till I was 36 just through my influence and my impact I had in the dressing room. I'm pretty certain of that because it wasn't through anything that I was doing on the pitch. So I'm always humble around my own ability because of the talent I had around me. And that's why I get caught on Twitter quite often. People will say to me, if you hadn't been at Manchester United, you'd been a jobbing right back somewhere like Fulham or Bournemouth or... Maybe I would.
mean, I've never heard anyone in a high managerial position disagree with the phrase that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I could never ever be accused of anything other than from the minute I joined at 11 to the minute I left at 36, Manchester United got everything out of me, everything. And to be fair, the club gave me everything. So we didn't owe each other anything. And that's something I'm proud of. Longevity is actually probably one of the things that consistency and longevity, being able to consistently work hard every single day at a good level of performance and turn up every single day and be there is underrated actually. And that's the thing that, to me, for surviving at 25 years under Sir Alex Ferguson in that environment of excellence and demands that he placed on people was, it was a great achievement. But I did that with a lot less talent than the other players in the club.
When was the first time you realised that Sir Alex Ferguson was, you felt his influence? You felt his mindset?
Do you know something? In the early days, it was the old school, like head teacher. He's not a head teacher by any stretch of the imagination, but that little bit of fear that you maybe have of your father as well. If your father sort of gets a bit angry with you, that little bit of that dominating male of the 70s, 80s, 90s, probably going back beyond that, was apparent in Sir Alex Ferguson. That you knew when he walked into the room went quiet. There was that presence, that aura, hit the boss's ear, and so you felt it straight away. When people say to me, sort of, how did you keep coming back every single year and continue to keep winning? What was the secret of that? It was by his actions and what he did. I always remember when I was 30, when did we lose the Champions League final? 2009, so I'd have been 34, right near the end of my career. I was doing we played the Champions League final on the Wednesday, we lost. We got back on the Friday from Rome, or Thursday or Friday. On the Saturday, I had to go and pick up my boots at Carrington, the training ground. So it was a Sunday morning. I had to go pick up my boots at Carrington, the training ground, to go to St George's Park because I was doing my A licence coaching badge. And it was my final assessment. And I went in at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'd organised to meet with the caretaker who was basically there on site all the time to let me in. And I parked on the back and his office lights on and he's there in his chair. I thought, oh no, I don't want to see him. We've just lost the European Cup final 4 days ago. So I drove back round the front and went in, got my boots and moved out. But he was there at Sunday morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock, the only person in the building with his light on, 4 days after we'd won the European Cup final. And he'd been in his mid-60s. And I thought, no one can live with that. That's the reason he's winning. That's the reason he's winning. Because no other manager, no other leader that I know, 4 days after that defeat, in his off time in the summer, is in his office on a Sunday morning at 6:30. And he didn't know I was coming in, obviously, and he didn't see me either. I just saw it, you could just see him in the distance. It was like, I couldn't believe it. And it just, all those sort of examples of that work ethic, they hit you every single day. And he knew how to tap into here. He knew how to get you, no matter who you were in the dressing room. He always used to get me, I always say this by mentioning he used to mention my grandparents. What about your grandparents? Getting up every single day, putting their tie on, the work that they put in, how they never complained about anything, you know, what they must have lived through, obviously, in the Second World War. And he would say things like that in his team talks, and it would always tap into me because I used to sit with my mum's dad and look at his medals that he got during the Second World War. He'd had 3 or 4 wounds. He had shrapnel wounds in his shoulders that he could still show me, and bits of metal still in his body. And he would talk to me about the medals and where he'd got them from, and how he'd been in Holland, and how he'd sort of had to come back, and then he went back over, how he married my nan on one of his returns back. So that used to get me every single time. So when I used to play for United, when you think about what motivates you, what gets you going, and you used to mention, say, for instance, grandparents, and there's that difficult moment on a pitch where you think, we're struggling here a little bit. And now I think of my youngest daughter when I'm training, what keeps me going to the end of that training session. I think of silly things. If I don't keep going here, someone's going to get my youngest daughter, and there's nothing going to get her, so I've got to keep going. And there it was my granddad, my mum's dad. And I used to think he wouldn't have stopped going. He came back having been wounded twice and shrapnel wounds twice, and went back out to fight again. And he had those medals, and he would speak to me about it. And I used to think, how can I stop? But he would find that in me. Sir Alex would push those buttons and press those buttons. For someone else, it would become something completely different, I'm sure. It might be talking about the father. It might be talking about him going on strike in the Govan shipyards. It might be talking about another experience that he's had. But he would tap into everybody in the dressing room in some way that would mean they'd find something to mean they would never give in. And that's what his film's called Never Give In. He never give in, but also the influence he had on others never to give in through finding something in them was incredible.
Rio talked to me a lot about culture and the culture that Sir Alex Ferguson said. Evra said the same thing. Having left football now and working in the world of business, you must be looking back on the culture he created.
Yeah.
And in some ways, drawing a lot from that in your own businesses, right? What have you learned about the importance of culture? Because there was this comment Ria made to me on the podcast that I've never forgotten, which is about Sir Alex Ferguson's lack of presence at the training ground. Ria said he only came into the training room dressing ground a couple of times because he didn't need to. The culture was in there.
Yeah.
And then Ria talked about how then when Ria went and moved on to another club, in that same dressing room, players are talking about how much money they're making and all of these other things, which would never have happened at United.
No.
How does one create that culture?
I suppose being grounded. He was grounded, and he believed in the work. The work ethic was everything to him. Being proud to work hard, being proud of the people around you who work hard, being proud of your teammates. He used to say, look around the change room, look around. I'm proud of every single one of you, but look at each other. Look at what you each do for each other on the pitch, and how you can't achieve what you're going to achieve without each other. So he made us respect each other. Not everybody got on in our changing room, but most of us did. But he tapped into those things all the time. It was non-stop, and being grounded, looking after people. Little things like Wendy used to get the charity balls signed, and Roy Keane was like this as well. So Wendy, every Thursday, would have 30 to 40 charity balls that we would sign, and then they would go to the children's charities or the different charities in Greater Manchester or in the country. And sometimes you're in a rush, aren't you? You're a football player, you're young. Wendy, I'll sign them after. I'm in a mad rush. I've got to go and do my stretching. I've got to have a massage. I've got to go and have treatment. Whatever it might be that you say on the way in, some poor excuse that you'd give. Or maybe you just generally did. And there was one day where he basically, I think Roy had walked past Wendy and she was a little bit upset, and only 5 players out of the 23 in the squad had signed the balls. And Roy went upstairs and said to Sir Alex, it's an absolute disgrace. This has happened a couple of weeks now. He killed us. He absolutely killed us. The lack of respect to walk past Wendy, who was there to get the charity balls signed, and not sign them for her, for him was a dereliction of duty. It was a lack of respect. It's not what you do. We're equal in this football club. We treat each other equally. We look after one another. We make sure that we're sort of compassionate. And the idea of not doing things like that, little things like that, I think just little things like that stand out in my mind. So now sometimes I walk into the businesses, and you know what we're like. We sometimes walk in on our phone and we don't say hello to people because we're that immersed in our own blinkered sort of space. But then I'll walk past sometimes and I'll realise I've not said hello to someone. I'll go back and say, I'm really sorry. And I'll say, hi, are you okay? And I do feel like even when in the office, there is no, I sit next to people in the office. I don't sort of have my own
Glass tower.
Yeah, I don't. I make sure I go and sit in cafe football in the hotel, or I'll go and sit in the main restaurant at Stocks or at Salford. I'll just go and sit in the main office, because the idea that basically, he did have his own office and he did have his own space, and he did, to be fair, delegate, and he would keep his. But so I don't think I'm like Sir Alex in the way in which I now look at my business, because I do believe it's very different now. But he was the staff loved him. Everybody loved him at the club because he protected them. He knew everybody's name. He asked about their families. He knew their families' names. He was really, really attentive. He was far better at that than I am. Far better in that than I am. But I probably, to be fair, mix with my teams more than he maybe would. So, but the work ethic is the thing. Honestly, the only thing you can ever do in life is work as hard as you possibly can and never give in. And he said, you've got that choice every single day. Really simple. That's it. The talent you've got, you just work as hard as you can every single day and never give in. And then you come back the day after and do it again. And that's it. That's the secret to what he believed. Because he said the talent is his problem. Forget talent. I've chosen you to be here. So I'm telling you, you've got the talent. Don't you worry about that bit. What I need back in return is that other bit, which is the focus, the commitment, the dedication to make sure every single day you get up and you're here and you give your all and you don't give in. And that's why I think I stayed where I was, because I believed him. I trusted in him.